This message comes from NPR sponsor Hulu. The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox, inspired by the infamous story you only thought you knew. Watch the Hulu original series, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers. Terms apply.
Hello, hello. I'm Brittany Luce, and you're listening to It's Been a Minute from NPR, a show about what's going on in culture and why it doesn't happen by accident.
Most people are not aware that they truly are one misfortune away from being homeless.
When President Trump sent the National Guard into the streets of Washington, D.C. earlier this month, he said his goal was to crack down on crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor. But citizens and homeless advocates alike have pointed out that his efforts affect some of the most vulnerable people among us.
In a post on Truth Social over the weekend, he wrote in part, quote, "The homeless have to move out immediately. We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol."
When these efforts were first announced, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said,
"Homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time."
An encampment, as defined by D.C.'s Department of Health and Human Services, is an abode such as a tent or unmovable structure of one or more persons on public property or an accumulation of unmovable personal belongings that are present even when the individual is not. And while government officials suggest that clearing encampments supports public health and safety, they don't often get to the root of the issue.
You know, we have these sweeps. These are when law enforcement comes and tells unhoused people that they have to leave an area and go elsewhere.
That is New York City attorney and housing policy expert Leah Goodridge. She's also a tenant advocate and member of the New York City Planning Commission.
Either they can enter a homeless shelter if there's room. It doesn't mean that they're magically going to fly into a home. It just means that they're going to go to another location, probably in the same city, in the same neighborhood, just not there.
The White House has said that more than 40 homeless encampments have been removed. But according to NPR's reporting, the encampment clearings have been rushed, and it's not clear where the homeless people have gone. And even though the city has opened more shelter beds, shelters aren't always the safest option.
What it all boils down to is they are uncomfortable seeing homeless people.
And the idea that people without housing shouldn't be seen or heard from, that didn't appear out of nowhere.
The U.S. has a history of dehumanizing homeless people. In fact, it was once unlawful for them to even be in public. In 1867, San Francisco enacted the Unsightly Beggar Ordinance, and it made it unlawful for any person who is diseased, maimed, mutilated, or deformed in any way so as to be an unsightly or disgusting object to expose himself or herself to public view.
Last year, she wrote an article in Dame magazine titled "Unhoused People Are Not Entertainment," because she noticed that while homelessness is frowned upon publicly, it garners millions of clicks online.
I started seeing a lot of pranks involving either homeless people or people pretending to be homeless. For example, in 2023, there was a YouTuber and he filmed himself buying a burger and handing it to a homeless man and then snatching it back to eat it in front of the homeless man, essentially as a taunt. Even in Spain, this isn't just limited to the US, a YouTuber was sentenced to jail in 2019 for giving a homeless man an Oreo cookie that was filled with toothpaste instead of cream, and that caused the homeless man to vomit.
These videos run the gamut from pranks to making homeless people dance for money. But according to Leah, this is just another version of poverty porn. A term from the 1980s that emerged from critiques of fundraising campaigns featuring malnourished children. Leah thinks a lot of the content about homeless people online is just as exploitative.
The whole point of poverty porn is that the audience, it's really about provoking or evoking a sort of emotion in the audience. And sometimes it's to get them to give money. Sometimes it's to get them to be enraged. Sometimes it's to get them to feel empathy or sympathy, but it is evoking some sort of emotion. So it is a form of entertainment.
Today on the show, Leah Goodridge joins me to get into how our legal and societal narratives around homelessness create a culture that punishes and mocks people in need. In your piece, you discussed poverty porn imagery. I wonder, how do you think poverty porn has evolved?
One of the things I think about is the circus. The main people in the circus that they had there, who often had very little agency, were disabled people, and some of them were homeless as well. And the whole point of going to the circus for this entertainment was like, look at this person who looks different from me. Look at this person who has a physical disability so that I can like pay money and be entertained by looking and mocking them. So that was also a form of poverty porn as well. I think what people get out of it is sort of looking and pointing and going, I'm not in their shoes. I'm not that. And I think that when we are seeing the evolution of poverty porn, that's a big part of this. People aren't watching this and going, hey, I'm going to donate money, or hey, I'm going to go and volunteer. That's not what's happening.
It sounds like you're saying that this kind of imagery is not, at least as it's kind of disseminated on social media, it's not getting people to act. It's getting people to maybe feel nothing too much and kind of go on with their lives.
I would say it's more than neutral. I would say it's getting people to dehumanize homeless people. It's playing into the sort of more normalization that they shouldn't exist, right? Because people are fine watching these videos online. When I say, okay, well, what about getting them a home? What about a homeless shelter? Oh, I don't want a homeless shelter in my neighborhood. It's going to lead to people hanging out.
With the concern for many people being that a homeless shelter nearby would bring an increase in crime and public safety issues to their neighborhood.
Lots of people are the first ones lined up to protest and oppose it.
I wonder, it seems like so much of what makes this content click with people, so much of what is undergirding the kind of political dissonance that you just described, that you've seen in your work, is this idea that homelessness is something that is very far away from their reality and something that's happening to someone else and something that is not supposed to be a part of their everyday lives. I wonder, this kind of content and that kind of attitude about homelessness and homeless people that you've seen, how does that affect all of us?
Most people are not aware that they truly are one misfortune away from being homeless. A lot of the folks that I've spoken with that are into the content demonizing homeless people are literally often one misfortune away. I mean, I've heard probably at this point, literally thousands of stories of New Yorkers. And I would say some common threads that I heard. I was working a job. Everything was fine. Life was great. And then I got in an accident on the job. Or I got in an accident. I became disabled and then I couldn't work. Or actually the other big one was they let me go. They fired me. And then it was hard to get another job. It was hard to work. I got another job and then they said, you have to stand up or you're back or whatever. And then I was let go again. I couldn't get back on my feet. My rent is going up. Remember, median Manhattan rent had hit at one point $5,000, right? And so, it's not like landlords are, when you have these life incidents, that landlords are like, oh, okay, fine. I'll just lower the rent for you. No, that's not happening, right? And so things are moving. And then before you know it, your income is not keeping up. Your disability checks are not keeping up. The family support is not there. And what family support looks like is literally paying your rent or having a place for you to stay if you don't have anywhere to go. The question we would have to ask people is, if you get evicted, do you have anywhere that you can go? And 100% of the time, these people had a friend that they could stay with for a week.
Yeah, that's not a long-term solution.
It's not a long-term solution. At most 2 weeks, right? Then I can tell you right now, that changed drastically starting from the pandemic. And then it just became, I don't even have that. And then the support systems wane. And then that's it. Before you know it, you're evicted. You don't have anywhere else to go. You literally don't have anywhere to stay. I just want people to understand how easy it is. It's not like you go and you find a cheaper apartment in New York City. That's very hard to do.
A very hard. I'm always on the hunt for that. Trust me, it's very hard to do.
Very, and trust me, I've had clients where, I'm like, okay, I don't know if this case is going to work out. So if you get evicted, do you have anywhere else to go? No. Okay, let's try to find a cheaper apartment. They go out, they're like, I found a rent stabilized apartment, but the broker's charging 15 to 18% of the annual rent. And then it's like, okay, so now you have these sort of like barriers before you can like access this apartment.
You have to have like sometimes tens of thousands of dollars on hand in order to be able
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, to move in, yeah.
Or I told them I have Section 8, and as soon as I said that, their tone changed. They didn't say anything. They didn't say, oh, we don't take Section 8. They just never got back to me.
And you, of course, don't know exactly what was going through their minds when they responded in this way, but it was enough to give you pause.
Can I tell you a funny story? Try to find an apartment, and then, the question is, well, what do you do? Like, oh, I'm a lawyer. And they're like, and are you one of those like civil rights, like social justice? And then I'm like, oh, wait, it gets even funny. And I'm like, no, I do like general law. And then this always happens. They Google me and they're like, tenants rights lawyer. Oh, no.
They're like, it's the feds. She's got to go.
So it's not great for us out here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've showed up on time with my now husband, called the person who's going to be showing the apartment, who said that, suddenly he couldn't be there and he wasn't going to be able to show up, only for him to then realize I was standing outside of his car window and could see him.
Oh my God. Wow.
But he was waiting in his car in front of the building, ostensibly to see what my husband and I looked like. He saw that we were two Black people, and he thought he wanted to stay there. So I did make him get out of the car and show me the apartment. At that point, I didn't want to see it, but I did want to ruin his day.
There's a lot of housing discrimination.
But I imagine that trying to obtain housing after, a period of homelessness, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Coming up?
Of course, we need to have a solution, right? But the question is, should the solution be punitive?
Support for this podcast and the following message come from Mint Mobile. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get this new customer offer and your 3-month unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/minute. That's mintmobile.com/minute. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. This message comes from Capital One. With the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One, you earn unlimited 2% cash back on every purchase and get big purchasing power so your business can spend more and earn more. Stephen, Brandon, and Bruno, the business owners of SandCloud, reinvested their 2% cash back to help build the company's retail presence. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus. Terms apply.
Support for this podcast comes from Dignity Memorial. For many families, remembering loved ones means honoring the details that made them unique. Dignity Memorial is dedicated to professionalism and compassion in every detail of a life celebration. Find a provider near you at dignitymemorial.com.
Taking that in while also considering, the popularity of this kind of really dark and harmful content that you're describing online, I don't know, it makes me wonder, how have you seen the way that we talk about or represent homelessness online trickle down into your work?
I think one of the ways that I have seen this, is when it's time to build housing, right? I mean, and a disclaimer here, I sit on the Planning Commission, but I'm not here in that capacity. But one of the things I talk about frequently on the Planning Commission is that the housing that comes through when it's affordable, no one who is homeless or formerly homeless or trying to leave being homeless can afford this. When I say, we need more housing for very low income people, they do this whole like, well, if we're going to spend government money, there's already public housing. Why don't we have for middle income? And so I say, okay, well, we have for middle income, but also for very low income. And then they're like, well, and then we get to the meat of it, which is like, a lot of people are fine with leaving out the lowest income. I'm a tenant advocate. I do a lot of community work. And I've had times where I've led workshops in so-called like low-income housing. They're like, okay, can you talk to them about not offering these empty units to formerly homeless people?
That reminds me of something you mentioned in your article. To quote you, classism did not just stem from the wealthy to poor.
Right. I worked as a tenants' rights attorney for many years, and I represented low-income tenants. And when I would talk about my work with everyone and anyone, I would hear the comments. And the biggest thing I would hear is, I understand that these people need help. However, I just went to my local grocery store and I saw someone pull out their EBT card to buy lobster. And I was like, okay, and what does that have to do with housing? But they're like, well, what are people doing to leave this housing?
Basically suggesting that they're already getting government assistance and aren't doing enough to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, essentially.
And these are Black, lower to semi-moderate income people that I'm talking to. So I think that was my realization, that the dehumanization of poor people, especially poor Black people, was really widespread. Sort of like, actually, no, people who receive government assistance shouldn't be able to buy soda or like whatever it is. And I know because I spent 12 years hearing these points in all neighborhoods I can think of in New York City.
I keep thinking about the idea of homelessness being criminalized and homelessness and criminalization being so closely linked as a matter of circumstance, and also, as you have discussed in this conversation several times, as a matter of literal law. It makes me think about something else that we're seeing happening in our country right now. You wrote an article last year titled, "Unhoused People Are Not Entertainment." That was last year. And now, this year,
our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it.
How are you thinking about the impact of this type of rage bait online content about homeless people now?
Yeah, of course we need to have a solution, right? But the question is, should the solution be punitive? Should the solution be criminalization? Should the solution be simply sweeping people up off the street or threatening to arrest them? Or should it be, how are we going to house these people? How are we going to have permanent housing for these people? How are we going to address the root causes of homelessness?
Well, Leah, I really appreciate this conversation. Thank you so much. This was really important and so timely.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciated it.
That was New York City attorney, tenant advocate, and member of the New York City Planning Commission, Leah Goodridge. And I'm going to put on my influencer hat for a second and ask you to please subscribe to this show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening. Click follow so you know the latest in culture while it's still hot. This episode of It's Been a Minute was produced by
Alexis Williams.
This episode was edited by
Nina Patak.
Our supervising producer is
Barton Girdwood.
Our executive producer is
Verilyn Williams.
Our VP of programming is
Yolanda Sanguini.
All right, that's all for this episode of It's Been a Minute from NPR. I'm Brittany Luce. Talk soon.
This message comes from Homes.com. What kind of programs does this school have? How are the test scores? These are all things parents ask when they home shop. That's why each listing on Homes.com includes extensive reports on local schools. Homes.com. We've done your homework. This message comes from Warby Parker. Prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Glasses designed in-house from premium materials starting at just $95, including prescription lenses. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you. This message comes from Mint Mobile. If you're tired of spending hundreds on big wireless bills, bogus fees, and free perks, Mint Mobile might be right for you with plans starting from $15 a month. Shop plans today at mintmobile.com/switch. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5 GB plan required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.